I fundamentally believe that theater should challenge us. It's a form of art, and we as audience members, we have an obligation to do more when we go to the theater. And so shows that, like How I Learned to Drive, that are a little controversial, have their place because they challenge us and they make us think, and theater should make us think. So when Little Bit comes out and from the very first line says that this show exists because she's going to teach us a lesson, we as audience members have an obligation to not just act as passive observers. We then become active witnesses to the story that she's telling us. And so it's important for us to look at that story critically, and because it's a memory play, ask ourselves, okay, well, why is she telling us this story? Why is she giving us this memory? What is it about this moment that is significant to the reason that she's telling all of us this?
When I first read the play, I didn't like it at all, actually. I'd been dead set on acting in the play, but then I read it and I was very uncomfortable with it. I didn't like the topic, I didn't like the characters, I didn't like how the family interacted. But then I read it more, you know, and I talked to you guys, and I saw deeper into the context, like what is actually being addressed here. And I saw the reason for it. I see why Paula wrote a play like this. It's much more in-depth than I first thought it was when I read it. Because it made me feel so uncomfortable, and I think that was Paula's objective. To make the audience, maybe even the actors and actresses in it, feel uncomfortable. And they should, because that topic is so uncomfortable.
It's dark, but there's a comedic tone to some of the scenes, and I was surprised by the show and how it's dealing with a serious subject, but it also finds time to relieve the audience of it's got an interesting tone to it. It switches from dark to lighter moments. I guess I was also surprised by how far it decided to take the subject matter also.
If you just see that part of it, you can't really look at the text, and after reading it I kind of understood, I think after reading it twice I actually understood, okay, this is really what it means. It's not all about this, although that is what ultimately defines her at first, or what seems to define her at first throughout the play. Later on she kind of has a self-realization that, okay, this happened to me, it was a really bad thing. I was unable to escape it at the time because I was unaware of it, but later on, looking back, she was able to really release that part of her because she was trapping herself through that same process as for what she experienced as she was growing up.
There is a victim, but it's not all, you know, bad guy and good guy. They both have their moments.
There's a song lyric that I thought of while after reading this play a few times, and it's called Alienation, and I forget who it's by, but they say everything you are, everything you were, everything you've been is not everything you'll be. And I think that perfectly just encapsulates the whole theme of How I Learned to Drive.
I think it makes us more aware of these topics. They're so controversial, people don't usually like to talk about them in public or realize that they're there, kind of. So this play makes us aware of that and brings it into reality so we know that this does happen. These sort of situations do happen. I feel like the play has two different levels. Like there's the level that everybody sees first, and that's all you can think about. Like when I first read the play, that's all I thought about, like the pedophilia aspect and the whole bad relationship between Lil Bit and her uncle. But then there's the other side of the story where Lil Bit is trying to fit into her family. Like she doesn't feel like she fits in. Her grandpa always makes fun of her, and she feels uncomfortable with them. And I think Uncle Peck is the only thing that makes her feel comfortable. She also faces it at school. The kids don't accept her as one of them because she's more mature than they are, physically wise and mentally. And Uncle Peck at least portrays that he understands her and accepts her, so she feels part of something with him when she can't feel part of her family or part of her school friends. I think that an audience can realize how it might apply to them. Not that they've gone through the same situation, but one little bit learns about herself and learns from what happened to her. She carries on and moves forward, and people can apply that to their lives.
I think it explains subject matter that we don't want to think about, we don't want to talk about, but stuff that needs to be talked about.
For me, this show does a lot of things. It does a lot of things that I find fascinating from a perspective as a playwright, as a director, as a performer, but as somebody whose research is on the efficacy of storytelling. I really think it's important to look at this story and say, it gives us something. It shows us a narrative that is a pathway through a traumatic experience, telling stories to help us heal. And I think that's one of the most important things that this story can do.
It's a beautiful show. It will touch you. Good or bad, it will.